Greetings, all you masterminds like rhymes, and today I'm going to be doing another concept, Warframe. So, before I start, I know it's been a while since I've done anything related to Warframe, but this is something that I actually don't mind really doing because it's unique. So, today's Warframe will be Virgil from Devil May Cry, the Alpha and the Omega. So, I already did Dante as a Warframe. So, how would Virgil, all of his stuff, be in a Warframe package? Well, first off, let's go over the passive. The passive ability of Virgil would be that the more attacks land, the higher concentration gets. So it's very, very similar to the concentration in DMC5, except this time you don't need to worry about getting hit because, let's be real, you're going to get hit in Warframe. There is so much going on that you're bound to get hit. So, the concentration meter goes up to 3 levels, not just 2. So, the concentration meter by itself gives Virgil damage reduction and higher shield regen. So, you want to keep your concentration up. So, the more momentum you have, the tankier you will be. So, it's that sort of high mobility, high momentum sort of frame. So his first ability would be his Mirage Blades. So, if you just tap the ability, you can repeatedly tap it, and then you will send out small, weak blades that do an okay amount of damage. They mostly do puncture, but a slight little bit of slash. But what they're mostly there to do is to stun enemies. And if you get enough of them into one opponent, which, by the way, they will have punch through. So basically, if you hit enough enemies quick enough with it, an enemy quick enough with enough of them, it will slow down the enemy. So you can use this to effectively cold proc a whole lot of enemies and make them slower. Not a whole lot slower, but slower. Then, if you hold it, and if you have a concentration that is more than 1, you will do Virgil's blistering blades, where there are 6 much larger blades that fire out in rapid fire and do tremendous amounts of damage. I'm talking like goes basically 50% of the damage goes through shields. It doesn't strip armor, but it does more damage to enemies that do in fact have armor, so it's kind of like corrosive. So there is that. And if you have concentration 2 or more, if you hold it down for a little bit longer than blistering blades, you can surround an enemy with blades and then they get hit with it, and it also will knock down all enemies that are around that one. And the one that got hit will take a lot of damage and get sent into the air. So, that's already pretty goddamn cool. So his second ability would be Trick Dodge. So you would be able to basically like Ash, but faster and better, not as disorienting, dodge around. You'd be able to do a trick up, which will allow you to get more height, trick down, which will allow you to get to the ground quicker, and of course you would have your trick dodge, which will allow you to dodge enemy attacks and all that other stuff. Now, trick dodge would work very similarly to how it does in Devil May Cry, where you're actually able to also dodge explosions. So you can literally just dodge through explosions. But to do all this dodging, you need to have enough concentration. You need to have concentration of level 1 or more. And if you mess up the dodge, you lose a lot of concentration. So you can use it if you want, but it's not really required either. It's just there to emulate what Virgil does, and that's his teleportation. His third ability would be his Doppelganger. So Virgil would make a clone of himself made out of energy, the energy color depending on whatever you color it. Typically it's blue. So this would work kind of like Wukong's Wu clone, except it would follow your every movement. It would do what you do. If you shoot, it shoots. If you melee, it melees. You jump, it jumps. It will also fire out its own little blades, but it will do this passively, and it won't do it too often, but the blades that do hit enemies basically put the enemy to sleep and allow you to put a finisher on them. And if you do a finisher on them, you get a huge boost in concentration. So this would be a pretty damn fun gameplay loop, And it already sounds like I'm making Virgil out to be a mostly melee frame. Kinda. He's more of a, I would say, spellcaster. He is a frame that really utilizes his abilities and passive and isn't just tank that use gun or tank that use melee. And his fourth ability would be his Sin Devil Trigger. So, to activate Sin Devil Trigger, there's first a Sin Devil Trigger gauge. You need to fill this up by getting kills, building up your concentration, trick dodging, all that other stuff, doing finishers to enemies that are asleep via the clone's own little Mirage blades. So it might take a while, but Sin Devil Trigger, while it will use up the Sin Devil Trigger gauge, when you activate it, first off, there's a huge explosion that would suspend enemies into the air for a brief moment and also rend armor. So it is an AoE armor nuke. This already kind of exists in the game. There's a few frames that can just like nuke an area and basically just remove all armor. I'm looking at you, Grendel, Caliban, other things like that. So in Sin Devil Trigger, Virgil becomes extremely tanky, everything is faster, and he doesn't use guns anymore. Instead, he pulls out the Yamoto. So, Sin Devil Trigger would last as long as you build it for. So it would mostly be based on efficiency and duration, but the max I would say you'd be able to use this form would be about 30 seconds. Now that doesn't sound like a whole lot of time, but let me tell you what Sin Devil Trigger allows you to do. Firstly, his blistering blades, there's more of them. There are passive blistering blades being fired almost all the time, in sync with your melee attacks with Yamoto. His 2 would be the judgment cuts. That little sphere that when he does the quick draw on the Yamoto, he basically slashes at a distance. This would ignore armor, ignore shields, and basically do a percentage of the enemy's health as bleed procs. So it would kill enemies really fucking fast. His third ability, he would do a quick combo with Beowulf on a group of enemies, or if you hold it down, you'll be able to slam the ground and draw enemies in. And his fourth ability is Judgment Cut End. Virgil does a very, very blisteringly fast combo that you don't even see him. And then when he sheathes the Yamoto, all the enemies take basically like 70 or 80% of their health as bleed procs directly to their health. This will usually be the end of Sin Devil Trigger, but you just cleared out a huge space of enemies. So, that's Virgil as a Warframe. Honestly, I kind of want a frame like this. He sounds like a whole lot of fun. I think Dante and Virgil as frames, if DE ever did a collab with Capcom and actually put Dante and Virgil in the game, I think that'd be fucking sick. Now I have to do one for V and Nero, don't I? That should be interesting. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I think Virgil would be an absolutely fun frame. I don't think he would be as flexible as the Dante concept that I made, but he would definitely be extremely powerful, very fun, and probably a little bit overpowered for like the Archon fights and other really tough bosses, quote unquote bosses. They're mostly just bullet sponges, but the Archon fights are actual bosses. So he might be a little bit broken for them, but you know, that's fine. We already have Big Dick Chromas and Mirages that are one-shotting Archons, so who cares? Anyway, let me know what you think of this Virgil concept. Would you do anything differently? Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, in Trilby, we trust.